Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just doing a little more reminiscing about my RAF controlling days. And I was chatting to a very dear friend of mine this morning, a very clever woman. And we were talking about a particular incident that I've had as a controller and what we could learn from it. So I'd like to share this with you. And you know, it's nothing to do with COVID-19. Thank goodness I have moved beyond COVID-19. So I'm looking back now to the 90s, and I was an air traffic controller at something called the London Joint Area Organisation. It was stationed at West Drayton, and in the particular little mini subset of area radar known as LJAO, I was controlling in the civilian controlling room, area radar control room, and working as a military controller alongside my civilian counterparts. And one day I was sitting in the crew room on duty and I got a call, South Bank at the rush, and my heart sank because South Bank is a position that we rarely get called to control. The airspace is a bit complicated, but the biggest thorn is the lack of handover from the French military air traffic controllers. So when the civil controller said, there's an aircraft calling you, you literally run because this aircraft has been dumped by the French controllers into space, and you have to run down there, plug in, get yourself sorted, and then find your aircraft somewhere in the southeast corner of your screen, take control of it, and then guide it home. And on that particular occasion, my heart doubly sank because I was fairly new to that position, and I hadn't learned all the airspace properly. I was not familiar to the level that I should have been. So I had a double sinking feeling as I legged it into the control room and plugged in. Said hello to the civilian chief controller, and we eyed each other with the same mutual distrust that was, I would say, actively supported and encouraged, not overly helpful, but that was the them versus us, the military versus the civilian controllers that we liked to engage in. So I plugged in, my two Sea Harriers were calling. I managed to locate them on the screen, identify, and then this little, the pilot's voice said, if possible, direct track RAF Yeovilton and continuous descent. Well, we all know that's code for we're running very short of gas, and please don't mess us around, or else it's going to be embarrassing and we'll have to divert at the last minute to another airfield. So I looked around my large expanse of airspace and I couldn't see anything at all that would come into conflict with them. So I said, yeah, sure, direct track Yeovilton, continuous descent at your discretion. And I could hear the relief in the pilot's voice when he said, thank you. So I just sat back and watched it all happen, and the civil chief turned to me and he said, ballsy move, Claire. Oh my goodness, for the third time, my heart sank and I felt this sickness in the pit of my stomach. And he was doing that very smug, I know better than you. I didn't have the heart to tell him that he was absolutely right. He did know an awful lot better than me, but pride would get in the way of me saying, what do you mean, Chief? I can't see anything on that radar screen that is going to come into conflict with my aircraft. So I just sat there and ballsed it out, gave him a knowing smile, and he sat there rubbing his hands with glee because he knew that something was going to happen very shortly that would be very, very difficult for me to control. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you know, he's just winding me up. This is just mind games. This is what we do all the time to each other. So I'm just sitting mind my own business. My Sea Harriers are making good progress in their continuous descent from flight level 350 back to Yeovilton. And then this enormous splodge of a radar return appears on my screen from Heathrow. And this splodge veritably leaps across my screen heading west. And my heart sank again. I'm not enjoying this shift, as you can imagine, and I realise it's Concorde getting airborne. In fact, I think, was it from Filton? I can't remember. No, it was from Heathrow. Getting airborne and going supersonic to the west on its way to New York. Now, even I knew that nothing gets in the way of Concorde. Once it's cleared for takeoff and going supersonic, it does exactly that, and everything else gets out of its way. Oh dear. my Harriers are looking like they're going to pass horribly close in front of Concorde. Nothing flies in front of Concorde going supersonic. So luckily there's a couple of gizmos on the radar screen where you can extend a line that goes from the aircraft's nose out into space, and it will show you, based on the speed of the aircraft, where it's going to be in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. And I extended the lines from Concorde and my own aircraft as far as they would go. And it appeared that my aircraft were going to be descending through Concorde's ascending level exactly 21 miles in front of it. Totally legal. Totally legal. So I'm sitting there calm as you like, calling Concorde to my Harrier pilot, saying, oh, out of your right, 3 o'clock, you may see Concorde climbing, passing flight level so-and-so, heading west. And my Sea Harrier pilots are thrilled because they're getting their cameras out and taking photographs, best shot of their entire career. And I can hear the civil chief calling to the Concorde pilot, Speedbird 01 or whatever the call sign was. You may see 2 Sea Harriers passing left, right, blah, 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 blah. And Concorde saying, visual, very impressive. So everybody's loving this moment. No, not really. I am dying inside. So my aircraft get past Concorde and I hand them over to Yeovilton and I unplug. And as I unplug and go back to the restaurant, the chief says to me, best bit of controlling I've ever seen, Claire. And I just nod modestly. I go straight to the ladies and I throw up violently. Not my best moment in my controlling career, and that's an understatement. I'm still traumatised by the whole thing. I can still feel the adrenaline pumping and my heart is racing as I share this with you. What have I learned from that? If you go into something underprepared, boy, be prepared for the consequences. If you go into what should be a collaborative team situation, mutually supportive, holding some divisive beliefs that come from your human egoic self, that somehow you are superior to the other members of the team, and for you to be superior, they have to be inferior, then do not be surprised if you back yourself into a corner and cannot ask for help because your pride simply will not allow it. What else did I learn? Know your limits, reminding me of a Harry Enfield sketch with the gold standard. I recognised in that moment what I'd always known. I was not good enough to be an air traffic controller in LJAO. End of. No matter what work I could have done, I simply didn't have that level of skill. So if I wanted to carry on just surviving, hanging on by my fingernails, great, go do it. Go torture yourself, Claire. But actually, no, get out as soon as you can and find an environment in which you can thrive. And what was the last thing I knew that day? My God, somebody else of a higher nature is looking after me, who has got my back. You may call it your guardian angel, your spirit guide, your higher self, the universe, God. Something was looking out for me in that moment. Clearly at that time, my career wasn't meant to be ended in ignominy, but I needed that warning shot across the bows. Oh my God, it was close. I needed to get out of that environment and find somewhere where I could truly thrive. So that's my sharing for today, my air traffic recollection. And believe me, there's many more for another day. And I hope that's entertained you to a degree on this rainy afternoon. And I wish that you are in an environment where you are truly thriving. And if you're not, if you're hanging on by your fingernails, my best advice and my invitation to you is get out. Go somewhere where you can truly thrive. Wishing you all the best. Take care. Bye now.